Hello, fourth year students. We said after we finish with the negation in English and talking about the main types of sentences, we are going to move to the most important type of sentences in English, which is questions. So, questions can be divided into three major classes according to the type of answer they expect. So we ask questions in order to get an answer. And the answer that we are going for the questions we ask are going to be different in structures. Accordingly, or according to the type of the structure that we expect to get for our questions, we are going to have different types of questions. And in fact, there are only three types. So, the questions that expect the answer to be either yes or no are going to be called what? Yes/no questions. For example, have you been to Paris? So asking such a question is going to be answered by only saying yes I have or no I haven't. And the structure of such a question is that this question starts with the auxiliary, followed by the subject, followed by what? The main verb. But if you are asking a question to get information, you want to get information from asking such a question and not only yes or no, here you are going to have a WH question. So the question that expects a reply that supplies an item of information are called WH questions. For example, if we ask, what's your name? Where do you live? How old are you? These questions, okay, we expect that the listener is going to answer them in complete sentences in which he is providing us with the information that we need. The last type of questions, and which is not so commonly used in spoken English, is called alternative question. Alternative question, we ask it and we are providing for the listener an option or two options or more, and the answer is going to be what? Choosing one of the options that we are providing in our question. That's why they are called what? Alternative questions. And in terms of the forms of such questions, and we are going to study that in detail later on, we are going to see that they can be similar to both in structure, both the yes/no questions or the WH questions. For instance, would you like to go for a walk or stay at home? Would you like to go for a walk or stay at home? You see, here I am giving two options for my listener, and he has to what? In his answer or in her answer, to choose one of them. So my listener is going to say either I choose going for a walk or I choose staying at home. So these are the three main types of questions in English, and we have divided them, as you see, according to the answer we expect to get from our listeners. The first type of questions we are going to deal with in detail here is the yes/no question. Yes/no questions are usually formed by placing the operator before the subject and giving the sentence a rising intonation. For example, he passed the exam. This is a statement. Why is it a statement? Because it starts with the subject, and this subject is followed by the verb. He, this is the subject, and the verb is passed. He passed the exam. And it is a statement because I am giving you I am saying something. I am providing you with information. If I want to change such a sentence or a statement into a yes/no question, I have to start my question with an operator. And you remember what we said about how to change sentences into the negative. If we have the operator in the sentence, all we need to do is what? to put the operator before the subject. But if we don't, here in this case, we are free to choose, or we can choose one of the dummy operators that we talked about, which are do, does, and did, according, of course, to the tense and subject of our statement. So he passed the exam. And as a yes/no question, it will be, did he pass the exam? Okay. So, and when I say, did he pass the exam, this question becomes a yes/no question. It starts with the auxiliary did. It has a rising intonation. Okay. And the answer is going to be either with yes or no. Either yes, I did, or no, I didn't. Now, what about statements that have the verb be as the main verb? How can we change such statements into yes/no question? So, if you have the verb to be as the main verb in your sentence or statement, you can use the same verb to work or to play the role of the operator. Okay? For example, the Jonases are late again. This statement has the verb are as the main verb. So when I want to change it into a yes/no question, I will use the same verb, which is are, to make it a question, a yes/no question. Are the Jonases late again? Okay. What about if you have a statement that has the verb have as a main verb, as a lexical verb, to give us the meaning of to own or to possess? I think you remember what we said about this verb when we dealt with it in the under the subject of negation. So here we are going to have two possibilities, two options, two forms for such sentences, one in British English and the other in American English. So in the American English, they say that this verb have is what the main verb, and we cannot use it to make a question. In this case, we are going to use one of these three auxiliaries, do, or does, or did. For example, he has a car. The main verb here is has. It means he owns, he possesses a car. So if I want to change such a sentence or statement into a question, a yes/no question in American English, I will say, does he have a car? Okay, you see, I use does as the operator. But what about the British English? In British English, they say that we can use, and of course here I am talking about the formal British English, they say that we can use the same verb has to play the role of what? Of the operator. So the sentence will be, has he a car? This is in what? In formal British English. What about the informal British English? They like to add or to use got as the main verb, and has will be the operator. So the sentence will be, or the question will be, has he got a car? You see, has he got a car? So has takes the role of the operator, while got is what is the main verb. This is how to form, how to structure, how to make a yes/no question. Now, there's a very important point you need to pay attention to in terms of what you are asking about in yes/no questions. If you remember, we talked about the role of stress in focus of the negation. How can the placement of a nucleus stress on a particular word or specific word in the negative sentence can help us identify which word the speaker wants to negate. The same thing we are going to talk about here. He is saying here that by placing the nucleus stress in a particular part of a yes/no question, we are able to focus the interrogation on a particular item of information, which, unlike the rest of the sentence, is assumed to be unknown. So here, when the speaker is producing a yes/no question and he is putting the nuclear stress or emphasize on a particular word, or is emphasizing a particular word, a particular element in his question, this means that he is asking about this word in particular. All the other parts of the sentence are known to the speaker, but he wants to know about this word because he doesn't know anything about it. Okay? Sorry. Then the focus falls in different places in the following otherwise identical questions. And every time we can change the focus of interrogation from one word to another by changing the placement of what of the nuclear stress. For example, was he a famous actor in those days? This is a simple yes/no question that starts with an auxiliary, which is a verb to be was, and the answer of this question is going to be either with yes or no. But what is the speaker asking about? What does he want to know in particular? And what are the elements that he has already known? And what are the elements that he wants to know about now when he's asking this question? So he can do that. The speaker can make this clear for us by putting the nuclear stress on a particular word. And from this, we can understand which word that the speaker wants to ask about, which word that he doesn't know. Okay, which information that is missing for him or her, and he or she wants to know more about it. So if the speaker says his question in this way, was he a famous actor those days? Was he a famous actor in those days? So here you see we are stressing those. So we can understand from this that the speaker already knows that he is an actor, okay? And he was not a simple actor, but a famous one. But he's asking about the time, the period of time in which this person he's asking about was a famous actor. So was it then, at those days, on those days, or later? Okay? Suppose that we are going to change the new place of the nuclear stress or the position of the nuclear stress to another word in the sentence. For example, the adjective famous. So the question will be in this way. Was he a famous actor in those days? Was he a famous actor in those days? So here we assume, or we can understand from the way that the speaker produces his question, that he already knows that this person is an actor and he was an actor in those days, in the past, but he doesn't know whether he was famous or not. So he is asking about this information in particular. He wants to know more about this information. Okay? So what do we call this? We call it focus of interrogation. And how can we identify it? We can identify it throughout the nuclear stress. Now, with also the yes/no questions can be in three important types. Again, according to the answer the speaker expects. We know that yes/no questions are answered by either yes or no. Okay? But does the speaker, when we are asking yes/no questions, do we expect an answer with yes, or we expect an answer with no, or we don't know? So here, according to the answer you expect, you are having three main types of yes/no questions. And how can we differentiate between these types? These types are, each one of these types has its own structure. For example, or we are going to start with the first type, which is called neutral orientation. Neutral orientation. A yes/no question which has a neutral orientation, which means that the speaker is only asking to get an answer. He does not expect a limited or a specific answer. Is it clear? He does not know whether the answer is going to be with yes or no. That's why we call it what? Neutral. So here the speaker asks a yes/no question whose answer can either be by yes or no. Such questions are characterized by the use of non-assertive forms. So if you remember, when we explained the use of the non-assertive forms in negative sentences, we said the non-assertive forms are used in negative sentences, in questions, and in conditional clauses, while the assertive forms are used in positive statements. So here, when in questions, when you are using a non-assertive form, this means that your question is neutral. You are asking because you don't know which answer that the listener will give you. Is it yes or no? So your question is a neutral question. For example, if we have such a statement, someone called last night. Someone called last night. If I want to make this a yes/no question of a neutral orientation, I will say, did anyone call last night? Did anyone call last night? Of course, because it is a yes/no question, I start my question with an auxiliary. Okay, did. Then, the subject is someone, which is assertive form. In questions, I cannot use someone. Okay, I am asking, I don't know anything about it, so I want an answer. I want my listener to say either yes or no. I am not expecting a particular answer from my listener. So here I have to use or to change the assertive form someone to anyone. So the question, the yes/no question becomes, did anyone call last night? Another sentence or statement, the boat has left already. The boat has left already. As a neutral yes/no question, it becomes, has the boat left yet? Has the boat left yet? So these questions have neutral polarity in the sense that it leaves open whether the answer is positive or negative. Hence, questions like negatives belong to the class of non-assertions, which means that questions are just like the negative sentences. They belong to the class of sentences in which we have to use what? Non-assertive forms. So this is the first type of the yes/no questions, which is of a neutral polarity or a neutral orientation, in which the speaker is not expecting or does not know what the answer will be. Is it with yes or no? And how can we identify it? We identify such a question by the use of the non-assertive forms. The second type of yes/no question is called positive orientation. So here, the speaker is asking a question to get only or to expect only one answer which is positive. And we know that the positive answer is going to be with what? With yes. So the speaker is asking a question to get only yes. He does not expect no. So a question has positive orientation, for example, if it uses, as sometimes happens, assertive forms in preference to non-assertive forms. So how can we identify such a question? Okay, how can we say that this yes/no question is having a positive orientation, or the speaker is asking such a question because he is expecting only yes and not no? We can identify this or recognize such a question if the speaker is using an assertive form in his question. For example, did someone call last night? Did someone call last night? You see, this is a yes/no question, but yet I am using what here? An assertive form, someone. I didn't say anyone. If I say anyone, this means I don't know. I want you to tell me whether is yes or no, whether yes, someone called, or no, someone didn't call. Okay? But when I say, did someone call last night? It means that I believe that the answer is yes. I know that someone called last night, but why am I asking here if I know the answer, if I already know the answer? I want only a confirmation from my listener. Okay, so these questions indicate that the speaker has reason to believe that the answer is yes. So the speaker knows already or expect already that the answer is going to be with what? Yes. He merely asks for confirmation of that assumption. I just want my listener. Why am I asking a question if I already know? Already have the information. I already know that someone called last night. I just want my listener to confirm for me what I believe in. They are frequently, or such questions, yes/no questions with positive orientation, are frequently used in making an offer. For example, would you like some cake? Would you like some cake? Suppose that you are in a restaurant and the waiter has come to you and asked you, would you like some cake? Okay, so you are sitting in the restaurant to get something to eat. So here the waiter is asking you because he already knows that you are here to eat. You are here to have something to eat. But he needs you to confirm this for him by saying only what? Yes. Is it clear? In this way, the questions that we are using are called positive orientation yes/no questions. The last type of yes/no questions are negative orientation. The questions or the yes/no questions of negative orientation. The opposite case of negative orientation is found in questions which contain a negative form of one kind or another. So I think that you can understand what we mean by negative orientation yes/no questions, in which the speaker is expecting one answer only, which is the negative. And the negative answer for the yes/no question, of course, is going to be by what? By no. How can we identify such a question? How do we know that the speaker is expecting only one answer, which is no? Here we can do that from the structure of the question that he is asking. One of the forms for such a question is that this question is going to be what? Negative, either by not or something else. For example, can't you give us any hope of success? Can't you give us any hope of success? You see, this is a negative question. We are using not, we attach not to the auxiliary can. So is it true that you can't give us any hope of success? Does no one believe me? Does no one believe me? This is again a yes/no question that is negative. How do we negate it? Here we are negating the subject. No one. Okay, we are not using not, we are but negating the subject by using no. No one. Okay, so the negative orientation of the yes/no question, it is said here, is complicated, however, by an element of surprise or disbelief, which adds implications of positive meaning. So what does this mean? Here, when the speaker is asking such a question, is asking a negative question, it means that he expected something positive. He had some positive expectation. But when he come to the fact, he finds the opposite. So he was what? He was disappointed. For example, isn't your car working? Isn't your car working? Here, this this yes/no question is negative. We negate it by using not, or we attach not to the operator is. Now, so what does this mean? It means when the speaker says or produces such a question, he he said, or he wanted to say, I expected, or I had expectation that your car was what is working. But when I ask you, I am what? I am disappointed. You told me the opposite. Is it clear? So do you really mean that your car isn't working? I had assumed it was. Here, there is a combining of a positive and negative attitude. You see, positive when you were expecting something positive, okay, and negative when you find the opposite, when you come to the fact and you find that your expectation cannot be achieved. So this is what negative or attitude. Which one may distinguish as the old assumption, positive, and the new assumption, negative. So we have two assumptions, old and new. What did we expect? We expect something positive. I expected that your car was working. This is something positive. But when I come to the fact and I ask you, is your car working? You said no. So I am surprised here. Is it clear? I am astonished. So here, this is a negative attitude that you gave me. So this is the new attitude. So the old one was the positive attitude that I had before, but when I came and find the fact is something different, this is the new attitude, which is what? Negative. Because the old assumption tends to be identified with the speaker's hopes or wishes. Negative-oriented questions often express disappointment or annoyance. Okay? Disappointment or annoyance. So you see here, we are using or producing such questions not to get an answer. We already know the answer is going to be with what? With no. But we are asking such questions to what? To show disappointment or to show that we are annoyed by what we discovered or found out. Another form of the negative orientation in yes/no questions is the negative questions that combines not as the formal signal of negative orientation with the assertive forms. Okay, so you can have the negative orientation yes/no questions by having not a negative question with what? With an assertive form. For example, didn't someone call last night? Didn't someone call last night? You see here, I am using not with someone. In a what? In a yes/no question. Such questions are similar in effect to type 1 tag questions, and which we are going to explain later when we talk about the tag question and know more about the type 1 of such questions. Or alternatively to statements showing disbelief. Again, we are asking such questions not to get an answer. We already expect that the answer is going to be a yes, no, sorry. We are sure that the answer is going to be no, but we are asking or producing such a sentence only to show what? Disbelief. So this question means surely someone called last night. Surely someone called last night. I was sure, okay, that someone called me last night. But when I asked you, you said the opposite. So you see here, I am having two different assumptions, two different attitudes. I expected something, but then I found out something else. So here we are having again two different points of view or two different attitudes, the positive first and then negative. That's why we are expecting the answer to be with no. We are sure that the answer is to be with no, and such questions are not asked to get information, to get an answer, but only to show disappointment, disbelief, or annoyance. So these are the main three types of the yes/no questions, which I hope that they are clear for you. And next time we are going to move to talk about another type of question, which is the tag question. Thank you.